citizen comments.
When started, I text you.
Yes, and then the next time you're going to text me is when they say we're going to start public comments on this.
Mr. Blogger, can you hear me? Can you turn your camera off, please?
Good evening and welcome to the recess meeting of July 11, 2024 of the Arlington County Planning Commission. I am Commissioner Steinberger, Chair. Tonight, the Commission will consider the following items: ZOA-2024-04, zoning amendment, ordinance to vacate the observation deck, Co-Star Roslyn, Pentagon Center PDSP, adoption of the Pentagon City Planning Study. Before we begin, I would like to share a few logistical points for all participants joining the meeting remotely and in person. For presenters and speakers joining us through Microsoft Teams, please keep your phones and other electronic devices muted until you are called upon by the clerk. Please turn off the sound to any devices around you to minimize interference. Please keep the cameras off until the clerk announces your time to speak. When called upon, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is in the meeting command bar at the top of the screen. Neither the moderator nor the clerk have the ability to unmute your screen. Once you have spoken, please mute your mics and turn your cameras off. If you're dialing in by phone to join the meeting, press *6 to unmute. Public speakers will be called upon by the clerk at an assigned time. Pre-registration and email confirmation to speak at tonight's hearing was required. We are not able to accommodate additional speakers. All speakers, virtual/hybrid, will receive 2 minutes to comment as an individual. Only representatives of a county board appointed advisory group/committee and/or commission will receive a 3-minute comment period. A timer will be displayed on the screen if speaking virtually, and speakers in person will follow the timer stationed on the podium. Audio of tonight's meeting is available via phone. If commissioners, presenters, or speakers lose internet connectivity, please reconnect by phone. However, if you are dialing in by phone and unable to see the screen, we will provide an audible 30-second warning to wrap up your comments. You'll be muted when your time has expired. The meeting chat is active for presenters or commissioners who wish who need technical assistance only. Please do not use the meeting chat for discussion, public comment, questions about agenda items, or requests for further information. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. Tonight's meeting will be available for review through the YouTube and Microsoft Teams platforms in real time. The links have been provided on the Planning Commission website. The meetings will also be available for review with closed captioning on Comcast Xfinity channels 25 and 1085, Verizon BIOS channels 39 and 40, 24 to 48 hours after the adjournment of the meeting. Lastly, this is a public forum. Tonight's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website via a link to YouTube as stated. All information associated with tonight's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act requirements. Madam Clerk, please call the first item.
Our first item for the evening starts at number 3, ZOA-2024-04. This is an ordinance to amend, reenact, and recodify Section 7.15 of the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance. We have Nick Rogers, our planning staff, to present this item this evening.
Madam Chair, thank you so much. Madam Clerk, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Several objectives for this item up on your viewer right now. First and foremost, the zoning text amendment that we'll be presenting on tonight is intended to create more repositioning opportunities for adaptation, modifications, continued improvements of our existing commercial building stock within the CO Roslyn zoning district. Also, keep thinking about more smaller scale adaptations where buildings can be more nimble and take advantage of dynamic opportunities for the commercial real estate market that are presented, tenants, residents as well, and really allowing the CO Roslyn district standards to open up for those opportunities. And then the final objective is to address what was announced earlier this year, the CoStar Group's economic development opportunity. I'll spend a brief moment on that, noting that CoStar Group has announced that they would be relocating their corporate headquarters to Arlington, to Central Place Tower, as shown on the viewer. The announcement did mention that CoStar intends to pursue sole use of the public observation deck through a site plan amendment. The site plan amendment and CoStar's proposal would be to provide an approximately $13.9 million public contribution towards public space improvements that would be allocated towards the reconstruction of Gateway Park. We'll get into some of the specifics of how this works from the district standards, but the actual item itself is not a part of this zoning text amendment, nor is it on your agenda tonight. The heart of that matter is really within a site plan amendment that will be before the board later this month. But I did want to acknowledge that it is part of one of the objectives of the study. The CO Roslyn district itself does date back to 1996, an outgrowth and an implementation of the planning processes that went into the Roslyn Station Plan area addendum. Think of the vision that you're seeing here, and for those of you who are familiar with that sector plan, the creation of a new generation of development, a first-class urban center to really be a fierce competitor in the Washington, D.C. Office and real estate market. The district's maximum density were set at the time at either 3.8 floor area ratio FAR for office, retail, or service commercial uses, and then up to 4.8 for either multifamily, residential uses, or hotel uses. But in order to provide, again, an incentive for that new generation of development, opportunities for increased density up to 10.0 FAR were built into the district standards. Those standard, and that's an absolute maximum. The board does not have the authority to go above and beyond that, except in some limited instances that were added to the text as part of a 2016 amendment, again, implementing the Roslyn sector plan that was adopted in 2015 at the time. And you can see those in the lower right-hand corner on the next slide here. We just have a comparison for you of how density, both the base and bonus density are administered and approved in that top row for virtually all of our commercial and mixed use districts, and the comparison with the CO Roslyn district is below. With most of the site plan development that comes before you, the applicant is making a request to go above and beyond what the district allows, what the sector plan is usually encouraging, or the area plan is usually encouraging and calling for. But that bonus density needs to be earned through provisions in Article 15 in our zoning ordinance. With the CO Roslyn district, there are similar and related mechanisms, but they're divorced from Article 15. They're within the CO Roslyn district standards themselves, really pointing an applicant towards the Roslyn sector plan itself for the guidance on those amenities and those community benefits. Density can only be approved by the board above 10.0 FAR if the applicant is providing new segments of 18th Street North, or if there's going to be a significant capacity increase to Metro Rail in that general location. And also the third option would be if development rights are being transferred from a different sending area. And so our approach for this study, again, following along with those objectives, a fairly narrow scope, looking at existing buildings, looking at approved CO Roslyn district development, perhaps that may be under construction, perhaps unbuilt, but approved projects, existing projects that may have been approved prior to the pandemic, prior to the Great Recession, looking for different opportunities to adapt and improve and reconfigure internal space without adding height, without adding mass to the building. And so the text that we've developed in attachment 1 for your consideration in your staff report, it would allow for the conversion of space that had been previously excluded from the site plan approval to now be included and added through an amendment process where an applicant would need to get county board approval and earn that density through community benefits. Would allow for conversion of area GFA that had been previously excluded. It would also allow for gross parking area, the conversion of perhaps underutilized or surplus parking spaces in a similar manner, to have that added to the approved GFA and to allow an increase above the 10.0 FAR district standards. I do want to emphasize that staff still feels that the vision and the overall the overall vision for development for Roslyn that's set out in the sector plan, we maintain that the existing 10.0 FAR is considerable and allows for that level of development for economic feasibility and to provide the community benefits that are afforded and called for in the Roslyn sector plan. And so the scope of our study did not consider and did not account for amendments to the sector plan, nor an adjustment to that absolute maximum of 10.0 FAR. We would contend that the existing provisions can still afford for the sector plan's implementation. A quick note on community engagement. We have been working with our colleagues in Arlington Economic Development and the manager's office on keeping local property owners, civic associations, the Economic Development Commission, our business improvement districts informed of the progress on this text amendment, as well as some of the other related items to the CoStar economic development opportunity. The board did adopt a request to advertise for this item in April, and we did brief your zoning committee on this in May. We do, and we're here before you for a public hearing tonight, and we anticipate that the board will take this up at one of their public hearings later this month. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll just conclude with our recommendation that the Planning Commission endorse and recommend the adoption of the text amendments before you tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I don't believe there's an applicant presentation on this. Okay. Do we have public speakers though, or any? Well, start with public speakers.
Mr. Musso.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. John Musso, Government Affairs Manager at the Arlington Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber, I would like to express our support for the ordinance that is before you this evening. This proposal to expand the maximum floor area ratio for existing and approved yet unbuilt developments in the Roslyn zoning district, we believe is a straightforward and ultimately common sense amendment for the sake of promoting greater development in Roslyn, providing the additional ability to convert floor area space in existing assets throughout Roslyn. I think we think is a very important and useful way for not only attracting companies like CoStar, but for other companies that wish to utilize our existing assets, which at a time of historically high commercial vacancy is a very key policy priority. And additionally, extending this to approved yet unbuilt site plan projects is also an excellent way to further facilitate the construction at a time of higher interest rates and other hurdles in the development process. So we ask that you please recommend the county board approve this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public speakers on this particular item? Okay. Any commissions, public groups? Nope. Okay. Did this go to ZOCO?
It
This go to
did.
anyone? It did go to ZOCO. Okay. A report from ZOCO, please, Commissioner Sarley.
It's really hard to follow staff on these reports because they sort of covered everything, but it did come to ZOCO. It was a very brief meeting and there was generally support for this notion. I personally like it because it scratches a couple of my itches on repurposing and sort of intelligently eliminating above grade parking. But I think other than that, it was just very well received. We had a few clarifying questions that staff provided information for us that I'm happy to repeat them as the discussion evolves tonight. Commissioner Lantelmi, Commissioner Guevara, and Commissioner Peterson were also there, so they can help me remember. But it was well received, and I think we felt good about it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Sarley. Are there any topics you would recommend we discuss further, or it was straightforward enough? We can just see if there's any comments generally.
I would say it's straightforward enough, and I think it's mostly just clarifying and understanding what we're voting for is the one topic that I would put.
Thank you very much. I should have also clarified before, I believe we are joined virtually by one commissioner, Commissioner Weir. Is that correct? We have one virtual commissioner? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Commissioner Weir. I wasn't trying to, if you would like to speak, you are welcome to at this point, but I was just trying to make sure I understood who was attending. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Any commissioners wishing to be heard for questions or general responsiveness to the topic at hand? Great. Moving to a motion. Commissioner Sarley, would you like to make a motion?
I will. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt that the ordinance as shown in attachment 1 of the staff report to amend, reenact, and recodify section 7.15 of the Arlington County zoning ordinance to provide authority for the County Board to approve additional density above 10 FAR in the CO Roslyn zoning district in instances where the density was either 1, excluded from an approved site plan's final density calculations, or 2, included as gross parking area associated with the development project.
We would like a second. Oh, Commissioner Bagley seconds. Thank you. Any discussion of the motion?
I guess I'll make a quick comment.
Please.
I think this is a good example of staff sort of, looking at ways that we can sort of continue to be adaptive and receptive to in this case, the business communities, but I imagine there's other uses also. So I think this is a good zoning amendment for us to support.
Excellent. Commissioner Bagley, did you, oh, you're ready to vote? Oh, well, I'm about to throw a little bit of a wrench in that because I'm going to start with Commissioner Weir virtually. because otherwise I'll forget to ask him to vote. Commissioner Weir, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley,
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey,
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli,
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara,
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger, aye. The motion passes 7-0. So thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the second item.
Item number 4 is an ordinance to vacate a perpetual permanent public use and public access easement for the observation deck, otherwise known by CoStar. I'm not going to read the entire description. We have Betsy Erbs as our staff from DES to present this item this evening.
Good evening. My name's Betsy Herbst. I'm with Arlington County Real Estate Bureau. And my piece of this project is here to tell you about the vacation of a perpetual permanent public use and access easement for the observation deck. This property is part of Roslyn Central Place Site Plan number 335, which was approved back in May of 2007. The vacation request was made by CoStar Central Place HQ LLC to facilitate the private use of the entire building, including the observation deck. The actual deed of easement itself, which is a perpetual deed of easement for public use and public access for the observation deck, was recorded back in November 2010. And the observation deck has been open to the public since that time during specified days and hours. As part of the vacation process, CoStar will have to meet certain requirements in the vacation ordinance, including payment of a significant compensation to the county for the vacation of the easement. Okay. I'm getting locked up here.
Can anyone else advance the slides?
Whoa. Stuck. Truly locked up. Okay. Okay. I will stop sharing and reshare again. All right, that doesn't seem to be the right thing.
Betsy, I think I have your presentation.
Okay, not sure why it's locked up. Although, here, let's see, and try this again.
Is that me or you? I think that's
Um,
me. Oh,
I think
is
that
that
is
you?
you. It's showing me on my screen. Okay, you can go ahead and advance.
oh, that's me.
That is you.
Yeah. Did you want me to? Are you able to present now, or did you want me to advance your?
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Oh, there we go. I think that's my screen. So this is a map showing the 4 parcels. I'm still not getting it to advance. So, all right. Technical difficulties.
In order to advance, you click on it and then you move. So if you don't click on the screen, it won't move.
Oh, okay. All right.
Do we have a path forward?
All right. Sorry
Okay.
about that. Okay. The RPC number that ends in 004 is the plaza area. And that parcel is has a GLUP designation for public uses. The remaining 3 parcels are designated in the GLUP for high office, apartment, hotel uses. The building containing the observation deck is located on these 3 parcels. They are currently zoned CO Roslyn, and the public easement is not shown on the master transportation plan. This is showing the plat of the vacation. It's a bit hard to see, but the observation deck itself would be vacated along with a number of other related features, such as the restrooms, lobbies, and as you see here, the elevator shaft. And I'll conclude here just to state that the recommendation to the Planning Commission is that you find that the proposed vacation of a perpetual permanent public use and public access easement for the observation deck, areas related to the observation deck, the mezzanine level of the observation deck, the outdoor viewing area of the observation deck, and related access located at 1201 Wilson Boulevard and 1730 North Lynn Street, Arlington, Virginia, is substantially in accord with the adopted comprehensive plan or applicable part thereof. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there an applicant presentation? No.
Nicholas Cummings here with Walsh Palucci on behalf of CoStar. The CoStar team is here tonight to talk and answer questions, but we really didn't have anything to add to Ms. Herbst's presentation, which is thorough.
Okay, but you're available for questions should the commission have any. Okay, we appreciate that clarification. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I do believe we have public speakers on this item.
We do.
Let's get it going.
I'm going to actually do the one virtual speaker we
Sure.
have first.
Okay.
Bernie Byrne, if you're online, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Please recommend that the county board deny approval of this ordinance. The ordinance would sell for $14 million. The public's right to use the Central Place observation deck. Arlington residents can presently use the deck without charge. As my written comment stated, the staff report for the request is incomplete as it lacks information about the county's planning processes for Central Place and its public observation deck. The staff report states that the ordinance is substantially in accordance with the adopted comprehensive plan or adoptable part thereof. This is misleading, but that's what you are asking me to approve. For example, the staff report does not mention the 2015 Roslyn sector plan. As you know, sector plans are supporting documents of the comprehensive plan. The sector plan advocates the protection of priority views from the public observation deck. To accomplish this, the plan severely limits the heights of buildings within a set of priority view corridors. This reduces the values of those buildings and the income that the county receives from the property taxes. No such limits are needed if the ordinance closes the observation deck to the public. The county needs to revisit the sector plan before it enacts this ordinance. Without an appropriate change in the sector plan, the ordinance will cost the county far more than the $14 million that will achieve from the applicant. This is even worse than the right to free access to the observation deck that Arlington residents will lose. The county would use the $14 million to hasten a renovation of Roslyn Gateway Park. However, the county has never demonstrated a need for any such renovations. The park is not visibly deteriorated. Participants in the public engagement process for the renovations have expressed opposing views about the planner's suggested changes. Many will not be happy with the changes that the planners select. They won't benefit from the renovation. Please do not approve this. The sector plan needs to be examined before this goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Our next speaker is Stuart Stein, followed by Stan Carson.
There we go.
Hello. Although it looks like this change will go through no matter what, I think it is important to go on the record. I was involved with Stan Carson, who you will hear from shortly, in the Central Place project for several years of planning. There was a work group, a height study, a site plan process, and for the observation deck, many meetings on programming and management. Throughout this process, Stan Carson almost single-handedly fought for, insisted on, some form of free public access for Arlington County residents and for veterans. In the end, this access was guaranteed for the life of the building. Free access was even expanded, and although the observation deck was not very busy, it was a public park, a one-of-a-kind space that replaced 3 existing public parks that occupied part of the block. I understand vacancy rate. I understand the excitement of landing a major company for Arlington. I know there are massive incentives involved, but where else would a public space, a park, be for sale? I know the 14 million will be put to use in nearby park, but it is not much for something that should never have been put up for negotiations in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you.
The members of the Planning Commission, I'm Stan Carson, president of the Radnor Fort Myers Heights Civic Association, commonly known as RAFARM, and RAFARM represents about 10,000 residents of the Fort Myers Heights and Radnor Heights areas of Arlington. We oppose the elimination of the Central Place observation deck in order to turn it into a private space. The observation deck, along with the plaza, was a replacement for the 3 public parks that occupied part of the Central Place block. We fought very hard to allow free access at specified times as often as possible for Arlington County residents and feel that the space is unique and irreplaceable at any cost. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Terry Prell.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Terry Prell, and I'm president of North Roslyn Civic Association. And much of what I want to say has been said, but you know we always repeat things. Our residents are really unhappy about losing this public space, and that's why we're here talking to you tonight. It was replacement for a park. It was the centerpiece of how we designed Roslyn. I thought peaks and valleys were a silly idea, but the whole thing was so you could see from this observation deck. 18th Street, which will never really happen, was so you would end up at the observation deck. And to give it away, because what Coast Guard is paying is practically what we're giving them between the state and the county. They're not giving anything for this. Our residents are really not happy, and we are asking for this very large corporation to give us a small little favor. We would like them to allow the North Roslyn Civic Association to have their general meetings, which are never more than 4 times a year and no longer last more than a few hours, on one of their upper floors so the residents of North Roslyn can see the view we were promised when this plan went through at Central Place. It is something that we are asking you to please consider and perhaps even put in as a recommendation. It is not a big ask for such a large corporation. We'd like to be like at least on the 20th floor so we can see the river and all the beautiful monuments, but that's what it was for. It was a public space for public use. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, any other commissions wishing to be heard on this item? No? Okay. Did this go to Zoko? Did this go to any subcommittees? No. All right, then the matter is with the Planning Commission. Oh, yes, Commissioner Bagley. Yeah, I think before we get to that, I'd like to see if there's any sort of topic-wise that we want to sort of focus the discussion, and then I'm thinking it may be sort of a generalized conversation, but are there any overall topics that the commission members would like to, commission members, another way to say that would be commissioners, that the commissioners would like to suggest for our discussion tonight, or just an open conversation? Okay, open conversation it is. Commissioner Bagley.
So do we have a record of how many visitors go there? I personally have not had the chance to go yet, but I thought it was a really cool thing. So how many people go? Do we know?
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner Bagley, for the question. For the record, Anthony Fusarelli with the Planning Division. We do have an arrangement. We've had an arrangement with the ownership of the property over the past few years since the deck opened in 2018. To obtain data and to share data on visitation. So what we can say and what we do know is that in the 2023 calendar year, we understand there were approximately 32,000 visitations to the observation deck. Furthermore, we also know that 5,000 of those 32,000 were Arlington residents, meaning that 85% of the visitations last year were non-residents.
Is there any, can I ask another question?
Yes, and actually, I apologize. I was momentarily distracted. What was the membership, the use that you had said? I just wanted to make a note of that. I didn't.
Certainly, and happy to repeat it. In calendar year 2023, a total of 32,000 visitors, of which 5,000 visitors were Arlington residents. And I should say visitations. We don't know whether or not those are all unique, unique visitors in terms of whether if I had visited multiple occasions, I would be counting as multiple value digits in that count.
Thank you. Apologies. And yes, Commissioner Bagley, you can ask a follow-up question, then we'll go to Commissioner Weir. And then I'm going to recognize myself for a question.
Yeah, so being that we live in an area which is visited by people from all over the world, it occurs to me that this might be a visitor attraction, so that you can see views that normal people would not be able to see in other places, at least none of the ones that I'm aware of. So I'm actually happy that there's people from the outside who would come here. The idea is we like Arlington to be a beacon in a lot of ways. So if even on a tourism basis, we are, I think that's great. So is there any plan to, or has there been a suggestion that this space would be made available to the public on a fee per visit basis? Or is it just, that's it, it's closed down, nobody else is going to come up here except CoStar guests, employees, things like that?
So if I understand the question correctly, I think just a couple clarifying points. So should the county board approve this ordinance of vacation, it would basically be one of the several steps or actions needed to make the observation deck available exclusively for private use by CoStar, who is now the building owner, the owner of this particular building. There is just to hopefully provide helpful context, concurrent with this, later in July, the county board will also consider a site plan amendment for site plan 335 with a request and proposal to revise several conditions of approval that speak to the public access easements, that speak to the observation deck itself. And so should the board elect to approve this ordinance of vacation and approve the site plan amendment later this month at its July meeting, after those actions are taken and after fulfillment of the terms of the ordinance of vacation, the use of that space would be exclusively private.
And would this vacation, should for some reason CoStar sell, leave, whatever, does this vacation then stay with the property?
Yes, once the applicant meets all the conditions, then an actual deed of vacation is recorded in land records, and that releases the.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Weir? Commissioner
I have
Weir?
a question about one of the specific plots, or one of the specific properties. This is parcel 160380002. I believe I heard that was part of what was being vacated, and I want to confirm that the vacations, the requested vacations, do not at all impact the bus throughway from Moore to Lynn.
No,
Am I correct that the vacations that is not included among the vacations?
the bus throughway is not included, no.
So that's not going to be vacated. That the county will retain that easement.
As far as I know, yes, that is not part of this observation deck easement, no.
Okay, thanks. I have another comment or concern, but I'll Madam Chair, I would prefer to let others go before I start making comments.
Sure. Since I'm up next, I'll accept that. Two questions, one I think for county staff and then one I believe more for the applicant. As far as, and this touches on what Commissioner Bagley raised before, of the 32,000 visits, and again, I appreciate that those are visits, not visitors, not distinct impressions necessarily. Do we know how many of those are sort of tour groups? Is there any way to sort of track? I imagine that some tour companies use this as a activity or some part of a package, you know, bringing tourists to Arlington to do this and maybe, you know, visit other sites within our county.
We do not have any specific data in terms of the number, frequency, or volume of tour groups that are visiting. All we have is the number of visits, you know, temporally over the calendar year, and a breakdown between Arlington County residents and non-residents.
Okay, thank you. So my question for the applicant is, you know, I appreciate that in taking over ownership of this site, that this is certainly an amenity and a selling point for, you know, your personnel, for guests of your building, and sort of an opportunity to, you know, host events and such things, and that the way that it has been available to the public, both Arlingtonians and otherwise, on sort of an everyday, whenever sort of thing, you know, within operating hours, would pose a challenge to your business desired uses for the site. But would you, or have you, as the, you know, future owners of the site, considered opening up the observation deck on certain predetermined dates of the year that where it could be used by Arlington residents to continue to have that benefit in some capacity, whether that was 5 days a year, whether that was 2 weeks in the summer, some sort of basis, so that it would be available on some sort of basis, ticketed or otherwise, and the public could continue to use it. That question is for the applicant, if they're still online.
Yeah, they are, and I'm going to let Mr. Joel Horning and Mr. Matt Blotcher answer more fully. But to date, we have not been willing to offer any public access here. I think the 14 million that we are paying in compensation for this that is going to go hopefully towards Gateway Park is really quite significant. It's tied to the original community benefit value that was attributed to this space with the original approval. And CoStar's preference is to, keep this private.
Okay, I appreciate that feedback, but would like to hear from the owners.
Good evening, everyone. This is Joel Horning. I'm VP of Facilities for CoStar Group. Just to echo Nick's comments, at this point, we are not prepared to entertain public access going forward. We're still working through things like design, what the actual use is going to be. It's going to be office space. It's going to be for the benefit of CoStar Group, our employees, and visitors. I'm not to say we would rule out some sort of community day in the future, but at this point, we are not considering that. And I'll repeat, we will, we may be open to that in the future, but at this point, we're not prepared to offer that.
Thank you. I believe Commissioner Lantelmi wanted to be heard, and then I'm seeing Commissioner Guevara, then Commissioner Sarli, and then we'll go back to Commissioner Weir if he's ready to talk more. Commissioner Lantelmi.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have 3 questions, and I think partly answered one of them. I was wondering whether it's going to stay in its current form or it's going to be carved up into offices. From what I heard from the applicant, it sounds as though it will be changed. It will not stay as it is. The use is still to be determined, but it will be, for the most part, office space. Is that correct?
Joel Horning here again. Yes, that's still TBD, but some form of workspace is definitely an option that we are strongly considering.
Okay. Second, I think that Ms. Prell's act is actually fairly reasonable and not very disruptive. If you have any conference space, I know those community meetings tend to be pretty small. It doesn't need a lot of space. I would think that if you could accommodate that, the 4 times a year that she's requesting, that would be a very nice gesture to the community. I know $14 million does buy a lot, no question there, but a evening use 4 times a year should be fairly easy to accommodate and would create a lot of goodwill. My final question is, what is the basis for the $14 million figure? How did we come up to that? How do we come to that number as being appropriate for essentially the sale of this public easement?
Thank you, Commissioner Lantelmi, for that question. So for those in this room or beyond who are familiar with the 2007 site plan approval for Central Place as part of 335, if they were to refer back to the community benefit package associated with that site plan, there were a number of project elements and components, including the observation deck, that were assigned a particular value. At that time, the value attached to the provision, the construction, the provision of the observation deck was equal to the $13.9+ million value that is attached to the proposed ordinance of vacation and will be attached to the site plan amendment report that goes to the board later this month. So that's the fundamental basis and origins for that number.
Yeah, I do know that inflation has been pretty high over the past few years, so I'm wondering if the 13.9 really is still an appropriate number, but I that's a comment. I'm not asking for you to respond on that. I have actually been to the observation deck, and it is a pretty spectacular space, but it was also really pretty empty when I was there. So this this turn of events doesn't particularly surprise me, unfortunately. I was actually pretty disappointed that there weren't a lot of people there when I was there. So, and it was a beautiful day too. I could see, you really can see a lot. It's pretty remarkable. If you can get anybody, I recommend going to it if you can before it ends up, should the county board approve this, that we can't get into it anymore. So if you can do it, please do. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe I went with Commissioner Guevara and then Commissioner Sarli.
Hi, could you guys let me know what has been the general community response to this? Are they for or against losing access? Do they prefer the 14 million going to Gateway Park as opposed to retaining access to the observation deck?
My office has not received any response on the notices about the actual vacation. There may have been some community engagement more generally. Is that the case?
Yes, I mean, there has been, so in the context of the site plan amendment that will come before the county board later this month, staff has been engaged with the host Civic Association North Roslyn and the adjacent Civic Association RayFom and other interested stakeholders. We do understand, and we have heard certainly the concerns, some of the concerns and perspectives that have been shared by some of the speakers this evening. But there have been relatively limited in number in terms of the volume of perspectives. It doesn't necessarily diminish those perspectives themselves, but several speakers here tonight, perhaps several other residents or stakeholders who have reached out with some of their viewpoints, but that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of comments. I know you mentioned that the vast majority of the visits have been, from tourists or non-Arlington residents. And, funny enough, this past weekend, I had family visiting and it was going to be a group of us going. And I know the hours have been limited quite significantly. And while it's just me as an Arlington resident, it was my family that I wanted to show off the sort of jewel that we've been, sort of supposed to have access to. And yet the hours have been restricted significantly. And I wonder if that's perhaps why, Commissioner Lund, tell me when you went there weren't that many people there because, people are under the impression that you can no longer access it as much as you were in the past. Along with that, I think it sort of sets a bad precedent to say, we are going to allow developers to sort of take back community benefits. I understand that right now it's difficult with, office vacancy rates and so on and so forth. But then it's sort of, what sort of message are we sending to the community as a whole? We've had, community members who are present here. They've been engaged in the process of what was allowed and what wasn't allowed and how they were going to have access. It feels to me as if it would be, I wouldn't say a waste of their time, but it seems like there's residents who are truly engaged and yet you're promised something and it's sort of pulled underneath the rug. And let's say hypothetically, right now it's sort of vacancy rates are low. We would be given this concession to them, but let's say the nature of work changes thereafter, and then it's going to be even a vehicle for them to make more of a return on their sort of space. So it really, to me, it feels as if it's also, I understand, 14 million is going to go to Gateway Park, but isn't it a little bit of, maybe it's just me, the haves don't have nots. So, residents can only be on the floor ground level, and yet people who have access and can pay, then they are sort of looking down below to the others. And let's say if we did take that perspective, not only did as residents lose that sort of, public space that we had before. Now we're also losing access to something that was promised to us. And I think that's a really unfortunate thing, and it sets a really bad precedent for whenever we are negotiating community benefits. So I just wanted to, inquire a little bit more about this decision making.
Is there a question there for anyone to answer? I wasn't sure.
The question was about have their community engagement, but I think he answered.
Okay, that part was answered. The rest of it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure you did get an answer to the question portion. Thank you, Commissioner Sarli, and then we will bounce over to Commissioner Weir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a quick question, and then I do have a few comments. So you said 85% were non-residents. Now, if I recall correctly, non-residents had to pay a fee, correct? Or was it free?
That's a great question, Commissioner Sarli. So a little additional background on the operations of the observation deck since it opened in summer of 2018. The board actually approved a site plan amendment in 2015 that allowed for a for-profit operation of the observation deck. So a for-profit model, which was a change from the nonprofit model, which had been approved or built in as part of the 2007 approval. Shortly after the building opened, when the observation deck opened in 2018, there was a hospitality group who worked with the building owner to essentially operate the observation deck as a destination, as an attraction, and at a fee, at a per ticket fee. Arlington County residents, it is true, Arlington County residents at that time were able to get complimentary admission. That form of operations lasted just over a year, and the hospitality group that was running the space as a destination really exited the arrangement in middle to late 2019. Ever since that time, so essentially for nearly the past 4 years, the building ownership has provided public access in the range, probably averaging approximately 60 hours a week or thereabouts, free of charge to anyone with a photo ID or a minor who was accompanying an adult with a photo ID, regardless of whether or not they were an Arlington resident or a non-resident. There were no fees being charged since late 2018.
Thank you. Yeah, because I was interested on sort of the economic, impact of the destination, this attraction. In getting ready for this meeting, just sort of Googled, observation deck, and there was quite a few posts that you see on, social media of people going up there. So I worry that we're sort of repeating a mistake that we did in the past, where we sort of undermine our own attractiveness and ability to sort of participate in the region with like an asset. And I think that this is a community asset that, helps us. And I'm always desperately trying to like find the soul of Arlington, and these are things that help us sort of identify or be identified with, right? The view, the vista, our neighborhoods, and so on and so forth. I think, so that was my question there. I think my comment is, and I echo Commissioner Guevara's sort of concern, is this idea of like community benefits and the longevity of these benefits and how much we as a community can expect, or plan on these benefits being here, let's see, less than a decade from now, right? And I know that some of the other benefits we hold a little bit more dear than others, like affordable housing and so on, but it just, again, to go to Commissioner Guevara's precedent concern, how flexible are these deals after we agree to this amendment? And then the other thing is on the assessment of the value. You probably can assess the value to something like the Grand Canyon, but would you, right? And I think, again, yes, this is probably 14,000 is probably a reasonable, 14 million is probably a reasonable number to use, all things being equal. But there are these intangible things, right? Like I said, the community, the view, like what's the cost of the view, right? Like, can you put a number to that? So that's the part that for me is very difficult to sort of see this as a net positive for the community, other than just sort of us losing, an asset, even if we're getting some sort of, consolation prize, which is sort of how I feel about it. So that's a little bit of my feeling. I will likely be voting against this because of the reasons I just stated. Thank you.
I'm going to do a time check for folks before I go to Commissioner Weir. We are a few minutes past 8 o'clock. I do think we're having a good discussion on this. I'm inclined to let this go for another few minutes, but I expect that I will be hearing motions of one order or another in about 10 minutes or sooner. Also, Daniel, you're being cut in front of by Commissioner Berkey. Sorry, he asked.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Berkey and then Commissioner Weir. Is Daniel allowed to go after you?
It's your meeting.
Okay, Commissioner Weir will be heard after Commissioner Berkey.
I promise
Thank
I'll
you.
be brief. I'd just like to associate myself with the comments of my fellow commissioners, Sarli and Gavada. Yeah, I think that was well said. Thank you.
I feel like that probably could have gone after Daniel too. Commissioner Weir, you're up, then Commissioner Bagley, and then myself. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually think, so I have two sort of lines of thought here. On the one hand is evaluating this particular, let's call it a transaction for discussion's sake. I actually don't like thinking about it as a transaction, but putting an economic lens on it, we can call it that for discussion's sake. I actually think that this particular deal makes a lot of sense in its own isolated context, right? We know what the needs are with Gateway Park. We know that the observation deck as a publicly owned private space hasn't, I think, succeeded in the way that many of us would have, that the Arlingtonians who were involved in planning for it, and our predecessors were involved, would have thought it, would have hoped it would have been when they were involved in these conversations. But I have some real concerns, and one of them was articulated by our public commenters, and that regards the priority view corridors. And there are a couple reasons that the priority review corridors are prioritized and protected, called out for preservation in the sector plan. One of them is this idea of peaks and valleys. That's mirrored in the Crystal City sector plan, but also suspended presently. Another one, and I think that the one that really is doing the work in the Crystal City sector plan, is that these were view sheds that existed as part of the observation deck's status as something that was publicly available, that was private, that was a privately owned public space. And I do not see the value. I do not see the value in continuing to treat preservation of the priority view corridors as a public benefit in evaluating future applications if the benefit of those view sheds is no longer going to accrue to the public in the form of view sheds from a publicly eased public space. And so I will be introducing a sense of the commission motion to that effect. Whether or not the recommendation, the staff recommendation, whether or not the commission adopts the staff recommended motion, I'll be introducing a motion to that effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bagley?
Yeah. As an Arlington resident, as an Arlington business manager, I understand that having a company like CoStar here is a tremendous community benefit to all of us. I get that. As a former civic association president, it is extremely troubling when you're fighting for community benefits to see that something like this can happen. And yes, it can become a precedent-setting situation. So I would also say that, yes, maybe the tower has been vacant for a while, but you're also talking about a time frame where COVID was out there and nobody was in office buildings. So it's an unfair comparison about how many people have been there, haven't been there, because only now are people starting to go back to offices. So I, at the moment, will have a very hard time supporting this for the mentioned reasons, but I am thrilled that CoStar has chosen Arlington County.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Bagley. Yeah, Commissioner Lentami, and then I'll recognize myself.
I do appreciate the comments of my fellow commissioners on the dangers of this, and I definitely share those. I think this also points out that we have to be careful as a public benefit or something. Parks don't have to make money. This space from the beginning, I think the intent was that it would at least be self-supporting. I think there's a real danger in us going down the path of creating public benefits that require some sort of economic justification, that they have to be self-supporting in some way. That really was more akin to a commercial enterprise that was being mandated. And I think that maybe we learned something from this, that this is not the greatest way to get public benefits. I think that Gateway Park is an enormous amenity for Roslyn that is in sore need of updating and being made more relevant. Way more people use Gateway Park and will be using Gateway Park than have ever used the observation deck. And it's something that you see every day rather than have to go out of your way to go to. So I think that I'm willing to go ahead with this because I think it is a fair trade-off. And I think we're going to be getting a lot out of this, because Gateway Park, we have to remember, is an enormously important public amenity to Roslyn and to our vision for Roslyn in the future, and to the neighbors who use it all the time. More people will be able to use it and will be happy to use it rather than having it just be this odd concrete thing in the middle of highways. So I will be supporting this. That said, I will also be, I like what Commissioner Weir has proposed and his comments on that. I think those are valid, and I would be happy to support any motion he brings on that subject. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lentami. I've given the current proposal a lot of thought, and I'm troubled because I do think that there's a precedent being set here that gives me pause. I appreciate the significance of Gateway Park, and I appreciate that approximately $14 million right now in this moment gets that park, to completion or almost to completion or whatever it is, in a meaningful way that it would otherwise take much longer, and, more tax dollars to do. We certainly want to be an accommodating business environment, for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I think that Arlington has, benefits greatly when we have partnerships with businesses that come here for the amenities that we offer and the access that we offer to this part of the country. And we benefit from having jobs and revenue and the creative energy that comes with bringing businesses to us. Someone recently sent me an article, and I believe indicated Virginia, best state or Commonwealth or what have you, for business in the country. And I feel very strongly that we should be that sort of an environment. And we are excited to have CoStar here. And I think Commissioner Bagley really framed her comments around that point as well. But I am troubled that we can't get more of a meaningful commitment out of CoStar that they will seriously engage in having some sort of ongoing, even if it's sporadic, one of my favorite words, basis to the observation deck. And I appreciate that changes will be made to the building. I appreciate that the exact setup of the observation deck could change over time, even very soon. But I don't think that the one has to exclude the other. So I will either be abstaining from the motion should someone care to make the one that the county staff has prepared for us, or voting against it myself. And I'll make that decision soon. I will also be making a motion along the lines of the following, that I move that it is the sense of the Planning Commission that the applicant should give real and meaningful consideration to how the public of Arlington may still have access to the observation deck at the site in some periodic and ongoing basis. I'm open to zhuzhing the language on that, should others have some feedback, but I do think that it's important to put on the record what I am sensing the sense of this commission is, which is that we are losing something that can't quite be quantified and getting something that can be quantified. We're just not sure if the quantification is a fair trade. So those are my final thoughts. They don't have to be the final thoughts of the commission. If another commissioner would like to be heard at this point in time, we can, but I would like to be voting in the next couple of minutes on the start of the motions. Okay, so that was the last comment. Okay. Would anyone care to make a motion at this point in time? Commissioner Lantami? Commissioner Weir has raised his hand. Did you want to be recognized before a motion, Commissioner Weir?
Well, I'll move the staff motion because I think we have to start with that.
Yeah.
I intend to introduce my other motion regardless of the outcome on the staff motion because I believe that it's an important point either way, but I think we do need to start with the staff motion. So I'm prepared to move that.
Okay, Commissioner, tell me, I think you were also prepared to, but we'll let, okay, Commissioner Weir, you're allowed to move the staff motion. Go forth.
All right, thank you. I just want to make sure I've got the right item before me. I recommend that the Planning Commission, I move that the Planning Commission find that the proposed vacation of a perpetual permanent public use and public access easement for the observation deck, areas related to the observation deck, the mezzanine level of the observation deck, excuse me, the outdoor viewing area of the observation deck, and related access located at 1201 Wilson Boulevard and 1730 North Lynn Street, Arlington, Virginia, is substantially in accord with the adopted comprehensive plan or applicable part thereof.
I'll second.
And to be clear, I'm
getting some feedback that perhaps you did not introduce the motion as, what was the issue, Commissioner Bagley?
I can't hear Commissioner Bagley, I'm sorry.
I think you needed to say that the Planning Commission recommends that the county board find as opposed to the Planning Commission finds. And I think that maybe you said the Planning Commission finds.
Well, we have a moved and seconded motion. Can I, before I do anything like seek unanimous consent to withdraw it, I want to ask staff about this because usually this isn't a 2232 situation, but usually in these kinds of contexts, county board action requires this kind of a finding by the Planning Commission. Can I get some feedback from staff or direction from staff on this?
Yes, that's what we are looking for you to make a finding that the vacation would be consistent or substantially in accord with the adopted comprehensive plan.
Okay, so in that case, is the language that Commissioner Weir used fine?
I think so, yes.
Okay, then Commissioner Weir, well, Commissioner Bagley, I appreciate you raising that concern. I don't believe we need unanimous consent to do anything. Also, I mispronounced that word terribly, unanimous consent. And we will move forward with the motion as seconded before us. Again, the motion by Commissioner Weir and seconded by Commissioner Lantami. I believe we've discussed this a fair amount, and I think we can move forward to a vote unless anyone has any urgent commentary on the motion before us. Okay. In that case, I will ask Commissioner Weir, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley?
Nay.
Commissioner Berkey?
Nay.
Commissioner Lantami?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli?
Nay.
Commissioner Guevara?
Nay.
Commissioner Steinberger, nay. The motion fails. 5-2 or 2-5. Thank you. Commissioner Weir, I know you have a motion. I also have a motion to make. Commissioner Weir, would you like to make your motion first?
Sure. Give me one moment to get to get my text in front of me so that I am also able to send it to staff and to read it as I prepared it. So I move that it is the sense of the Planning Commission that 1, the abandonment of the easements related to the observation deck at 1201. Let me, Madam Chair, if I may start over. I move that it is the sense of the planning. Thank you. I move that it is the sense of the Planning Commission that 1, any abandonment of the easements related to the observation deck at 1201 Wilson Boulevard would significantly undermine the importance of preserving the priority view corridors identified on the Roslyn Sector Plan. 2, that it is further the sense of the Commission that lesser consideration should be given to preserving priority view corridors when evaluating site plan applications within these corridors. And finally, that 3, when practicable, the Roslyn Sector Plan should be revisited to adjust the importance of preserving priority view corridors according to what planning goals that preservation still serves. And I will, I made some changes to what I previously sent to staff, so I will recirculate the current language of that motion.
Thank you. Did anyone second that motion? Commissioner Berkey?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on Commissioner Weir's motion before us?
My only comment is I will be voting for this. I support this. I think that Commissioner Weir has noted something that others may not have noted. I also want to state that this should not be taken that we would obviate the peaks and valley theory for the Roslyn Sector Plan, that the view corridors should still be, because we don't need the view corridors as we originally envisioned, that doesn't obviate our goal of having the peaks and valleys in the Roslyn sector anyway. I just want to make that comment. That's how I'm viewing this motion.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Sarli?
Thank you. I have a similar concern as Commissioner Lantelmi, except I think I come on the other end of it. And Commissioner Weir, feel free to clarify my interpretation or understanding of the motion. But my concern here is that, which is a good thing that you flagged, which I appreciate also Commissioner Lantelmi making that point, that this is such a critical ingredient to the whole master planning of the massing of Roslyn. And that by taking it away, what was essentially the plan is now a little bit void of meaning. But I'm a little concerned with this process of us sort of, it's a little bit like the CIP things where we're doing things a little bit ahead of, putting the cart in front of the horse, where we're now sort of, I guess that's a little bit of my concern. Do you have any reaction to that, Commissioner Weir? Did we lose him?
Putting the cart before, so thank you, Commissioner Sarli. I'm actually very specifically trying to avoid doing that to the extent that we can. I mean, one is, and I'm reminded, by Commissioner Lantelmi and others, that there are reasons for the peaks and valleys. There are reasons like peaks and valleys for the priority view corridors articulated in the Roslyn Sector Plan. So I don't think it would be accurate to say that the priority view corridors, that without the observation deck as a public space, there is no basis for the priority view corridors within the Roslyn Sector Plan. And I don't think that it's appropriate, and I don't think that it would be right, hence the third part of my motion, to simply say or to find that that the priority view corridors have no purpose. But it is very explicit in the Roslyn Sector Plan that a major reason for the priority view corridors is the observation deck. And we have acted as such in evaluating a number of applications that have come forward since the completion of the observation deck. So I think it is completely within the commission's authority to articulate its interpretation of the importance of the priority of the observation deck to the priority view corridors, and to say that in our evaluations of applications, until such time as the Roslyn sector plan is updated to account for the fact that the thing doing the work in identifying the importance of these corridors is no longer there, that until we have an update to that plan, we are going to wait, we are going to give less weight to the corridors than we would have if they continued to exist in the service of the observation deck. I hope that answers your question, Commissioner Sarli. There were bits and pieces of it that I missed, so my apologies if it does not.
No, that's great. So you're essentially saying that because we're freeing ourselves of the observation deck, you're saying that, I guess I'm a little bit still confused about the nuance. Are you encouraging us to disregard the peaks and valleys, or are you essentially saying that that's a risk that we're running?
I think that peaks and valleys are important, but I think that for a number, I think that it is reasonable to say that that peaks and valleys are not what's doing the work in when we say that the priority view corridors are important. Every conversation that we've had about the priority view corridors has been in the context of preserving the view sheds from the observation deck, not about peaks and valleys. And elsewhere in the county where peaks and valleys are articulated in sector plans, they're presently suspended. So I'm not trying to say that peaks and valleys aren't important. I'm trying to say that I don't think that we should be in the business of preserving view sheds principally for private benefit. Right, the view sheds existed. The priority view corridors existed to preserve a public benefit, and going forward, they would be existing as a means of using the state to preserve a private benefit. I do not believe that is. I do not believe that is a site plan. That is a community benefit or a mitigation for bonus or additional density, consistent with how we evaluate site plans.
Commissioner Weir, if I could jump in and maybe give a way to clarify this or to visualize it.
Please do.
If we look at a Venn diagram, one of them is peaks and valleys, the other is view shed. They overlap. Where the view shed is the only basis for the restriction, that goes away. But where it intersects with peaks and valleys is still there, and it is still valid, and it would still presumably control. There are also things that are peaks and valleys that have no issue with the view shed whatsoever, and of course those are not touched by this. So that's how I've been visualizing this, and I think that's what the intent is by Commissioner Weir's motion.
I have no problem with Commissioner Weir's intent that we ought to no longer preserve what used to be a community benefit, which is no longer a community benefit. So I agree with that aspect of it. I think a little bit of my planning hat and Mr. Fusarelli's here, who was a key player on the Realize Roslyn plan, so I'm feeling a little bit nostalgic, and this is a little bit my concern is from we invest a lot of effort, money, and time to making these plans, and then with one sort of fell swoop, the whole plan becomes a little bit irrelevant. So that's my concern. But I think generally speaking, Commissioner Weir, I will be supporting your motion, and I agree with the sentiment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to move us to a vote on Commissioner Weir's motion, barring any other urgent matters. Okay. Commissioner Weir.
Aye, thank you.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey.
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger abstain. The motion carries 6-0 with one abstention. Thank you very much. We have my motion left. So again, I will repeat for the purposes of the commission. I am making the motion that I move that it is the sense of the Planning Commission that the applicant should give real and meaningful consideration to how the public of Arlington may still have access to the observation deck at this site in some periodic and ongoing basis. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Sarli.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is the intent of this motion such that if, for example, the applicant does give North Roslyn, the community association, its desire to have community meetings there once a quarter or even once a month for a couple hours in an evening, that would be within the ambit of what you're intending here? Or are you looking for something that's way more general, that it's more like it's still an observation deck?
No, I think that it is intentionally, I intend the motion to be broad enough that it could encompass a reasonable level of activity and what the applicant feels they could reasonably offer within their, ownership rights of the building and how they intend to use it. So I think both of the spectrums that you just laid out are possibilities.
Then I will vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Guevara?
And just to confirm, if we do vote for this, we're essentially saying, yes, they can convert it to a private space, and then just based on their goodwill, then they would allow the public to view it once in a while.
Somewhat, if it is so converted, then yes, I expect there to be meaningful consideration given for what ongoing public use of some type would be, understanding it will probably, and I expect it to be, less than what is currently available.
But again, then we would still be approving that it could go for private purposes, right?
Well, with that, I'm not trying to understand the question. I mean, that the initial motion failed.
Yes.
So this is the sense of commission. I mean, that motion still stands. And we voted against, so we voted it down. So this is that in light of the fact that that motion did not pass, I think it is fair to say that the sense of the commission, in my view, is that the applicant should give meaningful consideration to how the site could be used so the public does still have some level of access.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to move us to a vote. Okay. Keeping with my system, Commissioner Weir.
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey.
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger. Aye. The motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. Any other motions on this particular item? All right, Madam Clerk, can you please
Madam
call
Chair,
this item?
I have a
Yep.
procedural question on this.
Sure. Yep.
One.
I'm recognizing you, Commissioner Weir.
Thank you. Do we have to have an affirmative recommendation or finding, or is it enough that we have? Is it enough that we have that we're able to report that we didn't have a majority on the staff recommended motion?
Is this a question for staff? I believe it is. Commissioner Weir is on mute now because I believe he was dealing with a small person emergency. So I do believe that the question was to staff of whether or not we've given sufficient voting material via our motions for y'all to present something to the board.
Well, this may have to be answered by the county attorney's office.
Okay.
But my understanding is the commission is an advisory committee. Generally speaking, we are looking for you to make a finding that it's substantially in accord with the comprehensive plan. But I believe the county board can take that into consideration and come to whatever determination they feel is correct.
Correct. We are advisory. We have given our advice it was no. And we gave 2 additional motions from which the county board can do what they will.
Exactly. So
So-
the board will take all that into
Understood.
consideration. Right.
Okay.
I'm satisfied with that.
Okay.
If you
Thank you.
needed to know, thank you.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item number 5 is SPLA 22-00054, a phased development site plan amendment for site plan 297 Pentagon Center PDSP. We have Christine Wallentesh to present this item for us from the Planning Division.
Did nobody tell the applicant they could have come a little later tonight? Sorry, guys.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. For the record, my name is Chrissy Wallentesh. I'm a planner with the Department of Community Planning, Housing, and Development. I'm joined by Joanne Gabor with the Department of Environmental Services. And this evening, we bring forward a request for a phased development site plan amendment for the Pentagon Center site. Pentagon Center is located at 1200 South Fern Street in the Pentagon City neighborhood. Site area is about 17 acres, and it's located within the boundaries of the Aurora Highlands Civic Association. Site is bound by the former TSA headquarters to the north, owned by Brookfield Properties, Penn Place to the northeast, Met Park to the east, Claridge House and Southampton condominiums to the south, and Virginia Highlands Park and Fashion Center at Pentagon City Mall to the west. The site's designation on the county's general land use plan is medium office apartment hotel, which permits office and commercial densities up to 2.5 FAR, residential density up to 115 units per acre, and hotel densities up to 180 units per acre. The site is also located within the CO 2.5 mixed-use zoning district. The slide shows the historical evolution of the PDSP. It was first approved in 2008 with an overall approved density of approximately 1.83 million square feet. This approval also included the adoption of both the Pentagon Center guiding principles and the Pentagon Center urban design guidelines. In 2015, a major PDSP amendment was approved, which increased the overall approved density to about 1.96 million square feet for the site. Phase 1 of the PDSP has since been implemented with the completion of construction of residential buildings A, the Whitmer, and C, the Milton, which are shown in red in the graphic to the right. Phase 1 also included the construction of the interim above-grade parking garage for Costco on Block D, which has also been constructed. With this amendment, the applicant, Kimco Realty Corporation, requests an amendment to the Pentagon Center Phase Development Site Plan to revise phasing, revise site layout, building placement, and street alignment, adjust the land use mix, increase density allocation and building heights, and revise the Pentagon Center urban design guidelines. The applicant stated that these requested changes are in an effort to ensure the site is planned for in a manner that is compatible with the Pentagon City Sector Plan, which we'll discuss in a little more detail on our future slide. And to be clear, the request in front of you tonight only includes a PDSP amendment. There are no final site plans for construction that are currently proposed for any of the future phases proposed for the PDSP. This slide provides an overall visual of the proposed changes, highlights of which include the conversion of building B from office to retail. So I'll go in kind of counterclockwise order here. The addition of a residential tower on block B1, as well as the provision of interim public space within phase 1 on B1. The relocation of major areas of public space to the interior of blocks D and F for the relocation of the buildings of blocks D and F to the front South Fern Street. The conversion of building D to residential, the conversion of building F to residential and hotel, and the realignment of the street grid. Here you can see the proposed phasing. Buildings B, B1 residential, and the interim public space will be delivered within phase 1. Then with phase 2, the interim open space on B1 will be replaced with an office building, as well as the full redevelopment of the western half of the site, including blocks D, E, and F. We've included language in the conditions that permits the applicant to submit final site plans using subphases, which will allow them to break up phasing into smaller sizes. For instance, for phase 2, if they just wanted to come in and redevelop block F or block E, they'd be allowed to do so without having to submit a final site plan for the entirety of phase 2. The Pentagon Center site is commonly referred to as the hole in the donut of the Pentagon City PDSP, given that the site is not located within the Pentagon City PDSP, nor is it located within the boundaries of the Pentagon City Planning Study Area, the boundaries for which helped to establish the boundaries for the Pentagon City Sector Plan, which was adopted in 2022. For the Pentagon Center site, the applicant must achieve any additional density above the current base, which is the density that was approved with the last PDSP amendment in 2015 via Section 1559 of the zoning ordinance. This section permits additional density for site plan projects through the provision of affordable housing, community facilities, sustainable design, and/or other public priorities as determined by the county board and as identified in the comprehensive plan or other adopted plans and policies. Because the applicant is requesting building heights that are now permitted for adjacent and surrounding sites via the sector plan, and due to the contextual relationship of the location of Pentagon Center within the metro core of the Pentagon City neighborhood, we are using PDSP level aspects of the sector plan and applying them to this PDSP. Those aspects more specifically include incorporation of segments of the green ribbon, streetscape design, street alignment, bicycle facilities, tree canopy, and affordable housing, as well as other design guidelines from the sector plan that have now been added to the Pentagon Center Urban Design Guidelines. This alignment of the Pentagon Center PDSP with the sector plan will help to ensure the site is developed in a way that is cohesive with the surrounding environment, although it is not within the boundaries of the sector plan. Compatibility is a key guiding principle from both the Pentagon Center guiding principles as well as the sector plan guiding principles, so staff fully supports this effort to align the Pentagon Center PDSP with guidance in the sector plan. In lieu of a full analysis of the proposal, which you can find in the staff report, we've gone ahead and outlined both the Pentagon Center guiding principles as well as the City Sector Plan guiding principles to demonstrate how the proposed PDSP amendment conforms with both sets of principles, which you can see here on this slide. Next, we'll look at the project evolution throughout the LRPC process, as we've seen as well as what we've seen in staff's review of the PDSP amendment. One of the major issues that was identified with the original proposed phasing was that it pushed all of the proposed public space for the site to phase 2, which is not expected to redevelop for several decades. This issue was discussed at the first LRPC meeting, and the applicant agreed to revise the phasing so that phase 1 would deliver about 25,000 square feet of interim public space on block B1 and delay the development of the office building on block B1 until phase 2. This is seen as a vast improvement to the project, given that no public space was previously approved on the eastern half of the site, and also because public space will now be delivered with phase 1 rather than all of the proposed public space being delivered in phase 2. The second major project evolution comes with the rerouting of the green ribbon pathway through the site. The sector plan generally envisioned for the pathway to run along 14th Street through the Pentagon Center site, eventually connecting with other segments of the green ribbon across South Hayes Street to the west and across South Fern Street to the east. Throughout the review process, it was determined that the green ribbon was better suited to run along 13th Street South due to the need for parking and loading access to occur from 14th Street South for buildings B1, D, and F, as well as to accommodate necessary on-street fire lane access. With the relocation of the green ribbon to 13th Street South, streetscape widths and elements can now be provided at the time of final site plan for adjacent block developments that are consistent with the sector plan's guidance for the design of the green ribbon pathway. Therefore, this is also seen as a major improvement to the PDSP that is a result of both the public review process and staff's review. The third major project evolution results in the provision of a small public space at the corner of 12th Street South and South Grant Street, as well as an enhanced facade feature. With the proposed amendment, building A1 is being converted for use as a loading facility as well as back of house space for the large 2-story retail building B that fronts 13th Street. While staff supports the conversion of building A1 to use for loading, concerns were noted regarding lack of activation on the corner of 12th Street South and South Grant Street, as well as the visibility of the loading activities from 12th Street South, considering that it's a red street typology according to the Arlington County Retail Plan. Thus, the applicant has agreed to provide a small area of public space on the corner to help activate this area. You can see this outlined in red in the image on the right. Further, the applicant has agreed to install an enhanced facade feature or architectural feature on the northern facade of building A1 in order to help obscure the loading activities from site, the location for which is shown as a yellow bar in this image. This feature may be provided in the form of a mural, art installation, or green wall, among other options that may be deemed appropriate by staff. This will also be determined at time of final site plan. And this change is seen as an overall improvement to the project, given that the activation that is expected on the corner from both a public space and enhanced facade feature. Community benefits will be discussed and determined at time of final site plan for all future phases and subphases of development. However, at the PDSP level, we have identified the following areas for which community benefits may be earned to help guide future discussions. Design, construction, and maintenance of public spaces and segments of the green ribbon throughout the site. Construction of protected bike lanes on South Fern Street and a portion of 15th Street South. Street grid and streetscape alignment to match that of the sector plan and surrounding blocks. Minimum commitment to on-site affordable units representing 10% of additional residential density above the 2015 PDSP density levels. LEED Gold certification for all new buildings. Minimum tree canopy coverage of 40% and incremental delivery of benefits with each phase. For project timeline, LRPC held 2 meetings on the proposed site plan. Major topics of discussion at the LRPC meetings included phasing and the anticipated duration of Costco's lease, site layout, density, building height, public space, the green ribbon, transportation, and community benefits. The Transportation Commission also deliberated on this item at its June 27th meeting. The commission voted to recommend approval of the project on a vote of 9-0. The item will go to the county board, which is anticipated either next Monday in 2 weeks from now on either Monday or Tuesday, the 23rd or the 22nd. Given the information that you've heard within this presentation that's outlined in the staff report, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to the county board approval of SPLA 22-00054 for a phase development site plan amendment for the Pentagon Center PDSP to revise phasing, site layout, and building placement, adjust land use mix, increase density allocation and building heights, revise the Pentagon Center urban design guidelines located at 1200 South Fern Street. This concludes staff presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And I believe the applicant, we have a presentation. Please, when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Evan Pritchard with, oh yes, can Abby O'Clock be allowed to share her screen for her presentation? Thanks. While she's queuing that up, Evan Pritchard with Cozen O'Connor. Very happy to be here tonight. I know that was a link. We did get here and see the full full presentation. That went a little bit longer than we expected, but we were happy. That's just we're happy to see the process in action. In light of that, we'll try to be brief. Christy did an excellent job summarizing all the finer points of the application, and my clients will go through the presentation quickly. I just want to say at bottom, this application is before you as I like Christy's word in the application, an evolution. While we were not part of the Pentagon City Sector Plan study, we did watch that very carefully. We did actually reach out to staff during the pendency of that process to say, hey, this is giving us ideas on better ways we might evolve with the rest of Pentagon City. We want to be active in the conversation. And so what you'll see tonight is the fruit of a lot of conversations that date back a pretty good ways, and hopefully you'll agree, we believe dovetail more nicely with Pentagon City now and going into the future than what we all conceived would be the future in 2015 before we had heard of HQ2 and people still worked in offices, et cetera, et cetera. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Greg Reed and Abby O'Clock from Kimco.
Good evening. I'd like to start by thanking staff. Christy's been great to work with. She also took almost all my speaking points, so I'll be very brief. I'd like to start all the meetings off by saying Costco is not going anywhere. They have long-term control, as we've discussed during some of our meetings. They will be here for a long time. And part of this, as we go through this, will be, here we go, starting.
To the person who just joined, I think you should be on mute. Thank you.
So part of this application and the amendment is to address that Costco is a long-term tenant and will be. So just briefly about Kimco, we are a publicly traded company. We have over 550 shopping centers around the country and over 100 million square feet. We've owned Pentagon Center since 2004. We were part of the 2008 application and the amendment in 2015. Kimco is a long-term owner and operator. We do not sell a lot of things. We own, hold, and become part of the community. So That is very important when it comes to some of our guiding principles, such as our ESG programs, which are to become part of the environment for environmental, social, and governance issues. We're very careful in how we operate our shopping centers. We do a lot of things, such as we build a gold LEED is our standard for all our buildings nowadays. We also have gone through many of our shopping centers and changed our lighting, our irrigation systems, providing bike racks, electric charging stations, all to try to be better stewards moving forward, because we're going to own the shopping centers for a long time. In 2020, we did a $500 million green bond that has been used to do numerous things in a lot of our shopping centers, including our standards for lighting, irrigation, and our building standard of gold. We also, as a company, give over $1 million to charitable organizations and small businesses. We, during the pandemic, took a stance, and there's a song you may recognize, "Love the One You're With." We took a stance at Kimco to work with all our tenants, especially the small ones, to keep them, because it was, in all honesty, selfishly, it was cheaper for us to work with our tenants and help them with rent relief or get PIP money than it would have been to hold the line, throw them out, and have vacancy, which has worked out great for us coming out of it, that we now have the highest occupants we've had in the history of the company. So the plan was sort of self-centered that it worked out, but it also worked out for a lot of our small tenants that they were able to stay. So tonight, we are joined also, as Evan said, he is here with us, but we also have Cooper Carey and Steve Smith is on the line if any questions come up from architecture. We also have Vika on the line, our civil and landscape architect. So we have gathered a team that is very familiar with Arlington, has done a lot of work in Arlington, and knows sort of what will really fit and place here on this project. So I think Chrissy did a great job of explaining where we are and the history. You know, this is the Costco anchored center, as everybody knows. We started after the 2015 amendment and completed the first phase, which is the Whitmer. It opened in 2018. After that, we did the Milton building, which opened in 2023. Both buildings have been very successful. The one thing it did do with both buildings is take all the residential allocation that was permitted in the 2015 PDSP. So there's no more additional residential permitted on the site at this time. So these are a couple pictures. So that is the Milton that just opened in the top left corner. Also, as part of this, we redid the mall. We did both the inside, the corridors, changing all the lighting and trying to freshen it up and spruce it. And we did the side you can see down there, down Hay Street, to make it newer and fresher. And then the tall building in the middle is the Whitmer that opened in 2018. So this is from the 2015 approvals that we had. You can see the densities that were permitted. The couple of the biggest things, if you look at the site plan that were concerns, the grid pattern going north-south Grant Street runs through the existing Costco building. Knowing Costco is a long-term tenant not going anywhere, part of the application is to slide the street over so that when we look at the amendment and we get into the details of it, that Costco will be able to stay and we can start where B1 and B are with Costco remaining. Also, if you notice, another thing is the majority of the green space is in phase 2 where Costco is. So the big community benefit of green space would not be enacted till Costco left. Knowing they're a long-term tenant, what we've tried to do is fix that with having a green space in B1 until the Costco leaves someday. Also, one of the things we have had issues with this is there's retail on Fern Street is one-sided. It's only on the opposite side of the street. Double-sided retail always does better. So what we did is sort of flip the site plan to put the retail on Fern in order to put the green space more centrally located, also producing a better green ribbon, as we'll talk about, but it also was driven by giving two-sided retail along Fern Street. So this is so a lot of the reasons we're here, to go briefly through them, is COVID had a lot of impact on office, that it's not as in demand as it was before. So that's part of the change. Also, retail has significantly changed. And one of the biggest changes in retail is the junior anchors. And a junior anchor is someone like a TJX, a Best Buy or a Dick's, they're not as big as they used to be. So where they used to be in the 60 to 70,000 square feet, they don't need that area anymore. They're much smaller because of all the other things and ways they can deliver to your home, the way you can pick things up quickly. So part of the amendment right sizes the future retail so that we can take down the mall, bring it back in the B building, and have them in the correct size that they want to be. Also, there was no Amazon proposed in 2015, and it was not even thought about. That changed sort of the whole area, including the sector plan adoption. And then it also the amendment gives us more flexibility in the future phasing, where I've said that Costco can remain. We can take what is today the mall down and bring that back with a building and retail with open space. So with that, I'll turn it over to Abby to talk about where we are with the plan. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I will make this brief because, again, most of our comments have been kind of spoken for. But here is the numbers that you can see the increase in density from a 2.68 to a 4.78. You can see that includes approximately a 30% increase in the open space from the previous approval. And again, the majority of the increased density is actually residential, as you can see. And so really that's adding the 3 additional residential towers on B1, D, and F. Give my computer a second to just catch up, but really what we've done here is show you the sector plan approved densities surrounding the site. In light blue is the 7 to 9 FAR for the high density sites, and then south of us is 5 to 6 FAR, and then obviously 150 dwelling units per acre on the far west of the sector plan area. And so really at 4.78 FAR, we're kind of right in the middle, more compatible with the green below us. And so really, we are looking to be right there where the sector plan says for this area. This was mentioned previously, but the big change really is to create a double-sided retail street on Fern. And one of the sector plan requests was to create bike lanes on the going north and south on Fern Street. And so the 2015 approved street sections do not include that nor have the space for it. And so you can see in the section on the bottom that now we have room in the street section in order to provide that. And then additionally, in the future, there is room on the other side of the street for a bike lane to come in. There would need to be some amendments to the curb cuts depending on how the final layout would be, but there is room in the street section to provide that. Really, we've already talked about the green ribbon, but again, making sure that there is a connection all the way through the site and including the new 4.25 acres of park in the future. This is the phasing diagram that Christy showed earlier. And again, you can kind of see that this gives us the opportunity to build in phase 1 while Costco stays through the majority of their control. We've already talked about a lot of this, but again, this is kind of the community benefits that are similar to what's been requested in the sector plan that would now be happening in Pentagon Center. And so again, the things that we haven't mentioned are an increase in affordable housing and an increase in the tree canopy overall on the site with 40% in the open space. The next slide is the 6 urban design guide, these are the sector plan principles. And so you can see that we're also meeting all of these things with equity, places for people, transportation, maintaining all of the metro connectivity and bus connectivity that's already on site. We did want to highlight there are a few things that are not changing with this amendment that we do think are important to note just for everybody's understanding. We do still have the same street grid, even though the streets have been realigned for a different kind of block footprints. And then we do have complete streets still. And as you can see, as everybody knows, the definition today of complete streets is slightly different than in 2015. So obviously our streets are wider, having greater building zones for outdoor dining opportunities. Additionally, the heights of the buildings maintain stepping down to the south with the lower buildings. And so you can see our future D building matches somewhat to what's there today on the Met Park site across Fern. And in addition, it kind of follows what is happening with the Milton that was opened last year. And again, we still have a great mix of uses open space anchored by new urban buildings. Chrissy already mentioned a lot of this, so I'll flip this through, but we did have a good back and forth process, both with LRPC and staff as we worked through the process from our first submission. The first submission was in November of 2021, so this has been a long process that we've been working through. And so really, the interim open space that Chrissy mentioned is kind of one of the big ones, and that will be designed with the site plan of B and B1, whichever comes first. In addition, we did add the east-west green ribbon, as Chrissy already mentioned. And then the other thing that we did is we did coordinate with the fire marshal to make sure we had the appropriate fire lanes for all of these new buildings. And so we did adjust the street widths from 2015 and from our original application in order to provide that. And so really that's kind of the grand picture. And I just wanted to leave this up on the screen in case there are questions of this is kind of the plan with the proposed application.
Thank you very much. I do believe we have public speakers on this item, at least one.
Yes, we do have
Okay.
two speakers. We have James Wise on the line, followed by John Musso. Mr. Wise? Going once, gone. Mr. Musso?
Good evening again, members of the Planning Commission. John Musso, Government Affairs Manager at the Arlington Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Arlington Chamber, I would like to briefly express our support for this proposed amendment. As explained in the presentation, the amendment to this phase development site plan is a reasonable response to the changing economic realities in Pentagon City, such as the arrival of Amazon's HQ2, the rising commercial vacancy rate, and of course the shortage of attainable housing at all levels, both in Pentagon City but in the region at large. The Chamber believes that the amendments included overall in this proposal are overall beneficial to Pentagon City and to the national landing area at large. The increased density, the additions to the green ribbon and so forth are very positive developments for Pentagon City and also complement all of the goals of the Pentagon City sector plan. So we ask that you please recommend the adoption of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any commissions to be heard? Okay.
Transportation Commission.
Transportation Commission heard this, and also did this go to long range or
Yeah, I can.
and long
Yeah,
for both?
yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Lynn, tell me. You get
Okay.
to go now.
Transportation Commission. It was heard at the meeting 2 weeks ago. Cut to the chase, was unanimously approved. Discussion revolved around, not surprisingly, the new street grid, the bicycle facilities, the complete streets, all of which were met with approval. It was a pretty easy meeting, and as I mentioned, it was unanimously approved by those attending. LRPC, we had 2 LRPCs for this. I chaired the first one last fall. Commissioner Sarli chaired the second one in this winter. There were 3 main areas, I guess actually maybe even 4. Transportation, of course, was one. We got into the bicycle facilities, Fern Street, protected bike lane, what was going to be done with 15th Street. We talked about the street grid and how it was shifting somewhat to accommodate the existing buildings there. Also, we talked a bit about loading dock locations and why and how they would go. Parks and open space, the shifting of the green space away from Fern into the center of the site was met with approval, made a lot of sense, as does the addition of the east-west green ribbon and having the north-south green ribbon. So this fits very well with the larger Pentagon City sector plan green ribbon ideas. The temporary open space on South Hayes is certainly welcome. I guess I'm a little concerned about people going to get too used to it, so that when it goes away, there'll probably be a lot of people complaining about that, but it's a risk I guess we take to get that interim benefit. And remember, that is a temporary open space or green space. Massing, as mentioned in the presentations, massing is tallest and greatest on 12th Street, tapering down to 15th Street. And we see specifically in real buildings how that works, because the Milton has been built to the lower spec than the Whitmer, which is at the northern end of the site. So we can see how that would work on Fern Street, moving south from 12th to 15th Street. The changing of uses was also recognized as the change in the world. It makes sense. We had nobody complaining about that. And I guess sort of the biggest thing, which isn't really technically part of this, but everybody always wants to talk about, is Costco. The applicant made very, very clear that Costco is there. They have a 20-year lease. They will be there. This is all contingent on such time, if it happens, that Costco either decides to terminate early or decides not to renew at the end. But this is appropriate contingency planning. Clearly, the applicant is a professional at shopping centers and is very attuned to the very rapidly changing retail environment. And this contingency planning, as far as I can see, is very is totally appropriate given how rapidly the retail environment is changing. So we can't count on anything being there forever. And I think it's appropriate to do it the way they are. The change to move buildings over to South Fern is spot on. Retail is best when it's on both sides of the street, and this will then accommodate that along South Fern. And that will very much complement the completed Met Park site. So anyway, I guess that's remember, the other thing is this has evolved 2008, 2015, and now 2024. Over the coming 20 years, it would not surprise me in the least that the applicant would come back yet again. And I certainly would welcome them to do so as things change. And they are changing so rapidly that it would not surprise me at all for that to happen. Anyway, that's what I recall. I was not at the second meeting, so Commissioner Sarli, if you have anything to add for that final LRPC meeting.
No, Mr. Nantelmi, you covered everything.
Thank you. That's it for the LRPC.
Okay, thank you very much for the reports from Transportation and LRPC. The matter is now with the commission. Are there any topics that should frame our discussion?
I would say Transportation, Parks and Open Space, and Massing. Really, those are what we discussed.
Anyone have anything to add to Transportation, Parks and Open Space, and Massing, as those are the topics currently before us? Okay, Transportation. Anyone wish to be heard on that item? Okay, Parks and Open Space. Anyone wishing to be heard on that item? I'll at least be heard on that. I'm appreciative of the work that the applicant and the county staff have been able to come to in terms of having an accommodation for at least the time being, whereby understanding that the majority of the green space would take place upon the eventual resolution of the Costco site, having an interim green space to benefit the community, I think is a very positive solution. And so I'm pleased we're able to get there. And I believe in not just lecturing on the negative, but also praising the positive. So thank you for getting to that accommodation. Anyone else wishing to be heard on open space, public space, yada yada,
no,
park space?
I apologize.
No, other things. Okay. The next topic is Commissioner Sarli.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I appreciate the buildings lining Fern Street. I think that is an improvement to the master plan that was there before. I generally prefer enclosed spaces that are well defined. So I think that's something that I felt very strongly at the LRPC.
Thank you, Commissioner Sarli. Commissioner Lantomi, you had something else on parks and open space we heard on?
No, not parks. It was more actually on sort of the massing uses.
Okay, I'm going to move us into the massing topic then, and you can be recognized for that.
Yeah, this is massing uses, whatever. As we all know, Costco is a really big flat building. It's one level. It spreads around, big parking lot around it. It's a fantastic amenity, but it doesn't really work for an urban environment. But that's okay because Costco is really good. I'm a member, and I think most of us are here tend to go there.
I'm going there on Sunday.
Exactly. If Costco, and I've seen pictures that they have experimented with urban form where they have multiple uses above their store and their warehouse. Should Costco come to you and say, you know, we could redevelop this in an urban form, if they feel that that works for them, is that something you would be open to? Does this preclude that, or would this allow an urban form of Costco to fit into this site in some way?
So if Costco would be willing, they have to probably go multi-floor. It would, the way it would be, because their building is still give or take 150,000 square feet. So we could never get the grid to work. So they'd have to go multi-floor. I think we'd be, as you earlier said, we'd be back in front of you again. It would probably take up an entire block of the grid system, even at about 75,000 square feet per floor. But if Costco, we do a lot of work with Costco. We're one of their largest developers. I love having Costco here. They're a great anchor. So if Costco wanted to stay and come back in a configuration, that we'd do everything we could to work with them to come back in with some modification, however their urban format is at that time. They don't really have it yet, but if they did, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just want to make sure that's clear for anybody listening, because that is a community concern.
Right.
That is seen as a major amenity to the county and its residents. So the fact that you're willing to work with them, whatever, I think will be a long way to comforting people out there that this is really a contingency plan rather than a has to happen.
Right.
So
yes,
thank you.
Commissioner Sarli?
This might be a little bit of other, but I appreciated the massing in the LRPC presentation, and in this presentation from staff, even images that were hand-drawn. I think that is a good thing for the community to see, that things aren't fully baked, that it feels a little bit like we can actually have an impact on the conversation. So I welcome that sort of level of sketchiness and sort of, fuzziness that allows us to feel like we are able to input. I also would like to commend the applicant for having sort of carried that idea of working with the community. It was a genuine conversation at the time, and it continues to be. So I appreciate that, and I commend you for the process and what you've brought to. And finally, I wanted to just do a quick reaction to staff's presentation about a possible enhanced facade feature on, I think, I didn't get the slide number, but I think you mentioned that. So I think I just want to make sure to highlight, and this is for the applicant also, anything that happens with an artist or something like that, please include that as part of the team on the ground level, right? Nothing worse than bad urban design that's being sort of band-aided with a mural or something like that. I think it's a great idea. I think it'd be wonderful to have some feature in that corner, but just make sure to be inclusive right at the start so that the design of the feature, right, is integral and not slapped on. Thank you. Apologies, Madam Chair, for taking us in another direction.
That's okay. We're into the other portion of the topics. Anyone else wishing to be recognized? Commissioner Berkey?
Sort of an omnibus comment, but I share the excitement about this project. A few kind of stray thoughts. I also am really excited about breaking up the super block eventually, and so I'm very pleased to see we're kind of putting plans in place to do that. Appreciate Commissioner Sarli's comments, especially about the collaboration that occurred during this process. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Sarli, briefly.
I had one more point. On the presentation, there was notion of equity and affordable housing, which is great. I would just like to include equity housing and things like environmental impact, energy efficiency, and all those things. Those create equity. And then also universal design for the market rate apartments, also to make sure that we're including people that have all sorts of different abilities. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion, and is it coming from Commissioner Lantomi or Commissioner Sarli?
Could the clerk call it up so we can at least read it? Do you have it written?
I'm sorry, what are you asking?
The motion, the county manager's recommendation for this.
I think here's the
You got
hard
it.
copy.
Okay, great. I didn't have the hard copy.
Okay.
Yeah, if Commissioner Sarli doesn't mind, I could make a motion. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt the attached ordinance for a phased development site plan amendment SPLA 22-00054 to amend the Pentagon Center phased development site plan SP number 297 to revise phasing, site layout, and building placement, adjust land use mix, increase density allocation and building heights, and to revise the Pentagon Center urban design guidelines located at 1200 South Fern Street, subject to the conditions of the ordinance.
Thank you. Is there Commissioner Sarli with a second? Any further discussion of the motion in front of us? Okay, we will move to a vote. Commissioner Weir, I believe you.
Aye.
Yeah, aye. Okay. Commissioner Bagley.
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey.
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara.
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger, aye. The motion passes 7-0. I don't believe there are any other motions that need to be made on this item. Correct? Okay. Then thank you very much, and we will move to the next item, Ms. Clerk. Madam Clerk.
Item number 6 is the adoption of the following elements associated with the Pentagon City Planning Study. 6A is a Pentagon City Sector Plan. 6B, GP-353-22-1 amendments to the GLUP, General Land Use Plan and Booklet. 6C, amendments to the Master Transportation Plan, the MTP map, and 6D, ZOA-2022-01, amendments to the Arlington County zoning ordinance. We have Mr. Anthony Fusarelli to present this item.
Thank you again. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. For the record, Anthony Fusarelli. So item number 4 before you this evening is the proposed readoption of 4 elements associated with the Pentagon City Planning Study, including the Pentagon City Sector Plan, General Land Use Plan map and booklet amendments, Master Transportation Plan amendments, and Arlington County zoning ordinance amendments to Articles 6, 7, and 9. By way of background, the county conducted an intensive community planning process for Pentagon City between 2020 and 2022. At the study's conclusion in February 2022, the county board unanimously approved several items, including the sector plan, the general land use plan amendments, the MTP amendments, and zoning ordinance amendments. Subsequently, residents of 2 condominium buildings filed an action in the Circuit Court of Arlington County, challenging the approvals of the county board. After the trial court sustained the county board's demur, the plaintiffs appealed, and in May of 2024, the Court of Appeals issued an opinion that the county did not meet the public notice requirement of the Virginia Code, thereby voiding the county board's 2022 actions. As noted during the request to advertise presentation last month, the Court of Appeals did affirm the county's actions on 2 of these 3 counts. More specifically, the court found that the commission then satisfied the resolution and certification requirements under Virginia Code Articles 15.2-2022, 2225 and 2226. The court also found that the land use and regulatory provisions stemming from the sector plan adoption did not violate the uniformity requirement set forth in Virginia Code Article 15.2-2282. However, the court did find the county violated the public notice requirement under the Code of Virginia because the public notice published for the February 2022 hearing did not, lacked a sufficient descriptive summary, which then rendered the board's actions void. In short, the court's opinion on this count held that the notice lacked a sufficient level of detail to notify the public as to the specific geographies to be affected, as well as the manner in which the geography would be affected. And in response to this decision, Staff has remedied this procedural defect with an expanded public notice and is now recommending that the county board adopt the 4 subject elements related to the study. As proposed, the materials that staff is recommending for readoption do not include any new content beyond what was previously considered and acted on by the board 2 years ago. And this information is available by way of reference in the staff reports for this item, which refer back to the documentation and materials from February 2022. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to the county board that it adopt the 4 resolutions that are attached to the staff report to adopt the Pentagon City Sector Plan, amend the General Land Use Plan map and booklet, amend the Master Transportation Plan map, and finally amend the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance and applicable Articles 6, 7.12, and Article 9. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I don't believe there's an applicant presentation, but we may have public comment. Or do we have public comment?
We do. We have 3 speakers.
Okay.
I'll let Mr. Musso speak first.
Good evening again, members of the Planning Commission. On behalf of the Arlington Chamber of Commerce, I would just like to express briefly our support for the readoption of this plan. The sector plan that was passed back in 2022 is the epitome of, it's the culmination of a fairly robust process of community conversations as to what we want the Pentagon City neighborhood to be. And so the Chamber believes that the ultimate product, the final product of this sector plan was a good compromise of all relevant sectors of the neighborhood and of Arlington as a whole. And as such, we ask that you all please recommend the readoption of this sector plan and then ultimately seek to achieve the major goals that are included in it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Ribb. He's already up and raring to go here online.
Can I clarify how long I have to speak?
You have 2 minutes, sir.
Okay.
You are muted. Sorry, we can restart the time, but you're currently, okay, now you're off mute. Try again.
My name is Richard Rebb. I'm actually born in Arlington. I've lived most of my life here. I represent the representative condominium, which is on Arlington Ridge. I also represent the litigants that have brought about tonight. I urge you to defer action tonight for 5 reasons. First, court review of the actions you're slated to reapprove is still pending. As Mr. Fusarelli pointed out, there were 3 actions on appeal. We won 1, the county won 2. One of those points that the county won has been appealed to the Virginia Supreme Court. That should be resolved in either 2 months if they do not hear the appeal, or it could take as much as 2 years. Frankly, by rushing through reapproval of this while litigation is pending, in my view, does not look proper. It looks like the county is aligning with the developer to move the River House project forward, which in my view is improper. Second, the fundamental underpinnings of the Pentagon City Sector Plan are now, a few of those are unknown. If you look at the Pentagon City study in 2020, which evolved into the sector plan, the opening sentence was, with the commitment of Amazon to develop their East Coast headquarters in Arlington County, for the first time in the city, the 1976 Pentagon City Phase Development Site Plan is anticipated to approach full build out. It is my understanding that Amazon has not fully committed to that HQ2. Further, work habits have changed since this was done. There's much more remote work than people having to live close to where they work. So the planning assumptions, in my view, have changed, and you should consider that. Third, the Pentagon City planning study was developed without involvement of constituencies that had been led to believe that their participation was not necessary. This is a fundamental point, which is River House has always been separate from Pentagon City. I can give you the history of CAFRITS and how this all relates. I showed you the image that the county used to advertise the study. It does not
Mr.
mention
Red.
River House.
Your time is up, sir. Thank you.
You have my statement.
Our next speaker online is Tina Muse.
Good evening. I have been living at River House for almost 24 years. I request that you adopt the elements, but with the proposals for River House removed, and advise the county board to direct CPHD to conduct a special land use study for the River House site. A special land use study was requested in 2015, but withdrawn in 2016. No special land use study has been conducted since that time. This is inconsistent with the process that was applied to the much smaller Melwood site that is fewer than 3,000 feet away from the River House site. Melwood underwent a two-tier special general land use plan study. Why not for River House? One misrepresentation in the sector plan is the level of River House resident engagement. Only one River House renter was in the renter major meetings, and that renter lives in the building that will be the least affected by the proposed development. Most River House residents still have no idea that the applicant plans to begin construction as soon as 2025, and that their views will be blocked by new buildings because outreach from the applicant and the county has been anemic. Please do not respond that the River House residents' concerns will be addressed through the LRPC and SPRC process. For example, at the second LRPC meeting, I questioned why the applicant wasn't developing the site near a defunct bus shelter as green space. Neither the applicant nor DES were aware that the bus line had long been discontinued. If true planning were being followed, they would have been aware of this. Again, please request a special land use study is conducted before allowing the River House site to be included in any of these elements. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I believe that concludes our public comment. If I'm understanding correctly, this would have gone to LRPC like 2 years ago?
Yes, this would have, don't have the details immediately in front of me, but as a long-range planning study that concluded through in the form of a sector plan, this certainly would have gone to the long-range planning committee at least once, probably multiple times, and either Commissioner Lantelmi or others maybe.
But it did not go again as a result of the current status.
No, since the court's opinion in May of 2024.
Not gone back to LRPC.
It has not. It has come back to the commission, this commission for the request to advertise last month. It went back to the county board for the request to advertise last month.
Now we're back.
And we're back here.
Thank you. So I don't know, is there a report from LRPC?
No, because since we didn't have one, but there's been no change. Everything that we considered, we looked at for when we first voted on this is still in effect. We're under no injunction by the court to not move ahead. We can go ahead and do this. We have full authority to do it. There are no additional findings that need to be made. We've been through this before.
That's fine. I just wanted to get that clarification. And no other commissions would have heard this. No other commission speakers. Great. I will accept a motion unless there's further discussion.
I can make the motion.
Oh, great. Commissioner Berkey, hit me.
Okay. All right. I motion that the Planning Commission recommend that the county board adopt the following elements associated with the Pentagon City Planning Study. 1, the attached resolution, which is attachment 1, to adopt the Pentagon City Sector Plan. 2, the attached resolution, attachment 2, to amend the general land use plan map and booklet. Attached resolution, which is attachment 3, to amend the master transportation plan map. And 4, attached ordinance, attachment 4, to amend the Arlington County zoning ordinance, section 6.5 RA 6-15 multifamily dwelling district, section 7.12 C-2.5 mixed use district, and section 9 special planning area
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and it has been seconded. Any discussion?
I'll just speak to this motion. As staff, Mr. Fusarelli indicated, this is before us because we in the county board need to take action in order to cure the defects that were found by the Court of Appeals. And regardless of the merits of that decision, it is a necessary step that's been recommended by staff and presumably the county attorney. And so I am happy 2 years later to now be on the Planning Commission and get to vote again in favor of the Pentagon City Planning study. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner
I
Antelmi?
just want to comment, we are curing a procedural misstep. There was no substantive criticism of what we have done here or what we did originally and what the county did. So again, we are simply correcting a procedural misstep, that there was no substantive changes.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to move us to a vote. Commissioner Weir?
Aye.
Commissioner Bagley?
Aye.
Commissioner Berkey?
Aye.
Commissioner Antelmi?
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli?
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger? Aye. The motion passes 7-0. And I don't believe there are any other motions that need to be made on this particular item. Wonderful. Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, I believe we have one item left. Sorry. We have one item left, the minutes?
The minutes, yeah, for
Yes.
June 3rd.
Do you need to call that or do I just move into that?
You can go ahead and just move.
Okay.
please. Thank you.
We have two sets of minutes from last month. I am looking for a motion to move the June 3rd minutes, to approve the June 3rd minutes. Someone can do that by unanimous consent if they are so inclined.
I can try.
Okay.
Oh. I seek unanimous consent to approve last month's commission meetings.
Give me a
From
date.
June 3rd.
June 3rd.
Thank you.
Commission meeting minutes.
Okay. You said unanimous consent, right? No objections? Great. So moved. Now I would like someone, it can be Commissioner Sarli again, if you would like to, move the, into the record, the minutes from June 5th.
I seek unanimous consent for the commission to approve June 6th. Did I get the date right?
June 5th.
5th, sorry. Meeting minutes.
No, without objection, so moved. The minutes have been accepted from June 5th and June 3rd. Oh, June 5th was the fun meeting. That one ended at 33 minutes. I like that one. Okay, not so much tonight, but I do believe we've covered everything on the agenda. All right. Thank you all for your time and attention. There is no Planning Commission meeting next month, which is August. We are in recess. We will see y'all in September. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Thank you. Ooh, pen.